Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to Couch Conversations with the Doctors, where health is wealth. What night is it tonight? It is Monday night, and it is time for Couch Conversations with the Doctors. We are hoping that everyone had a great holiday season. I know you guys were asking questions about us playing those reruns during the holiday season, but I know you guys were having a great time with your families, and we are back talking about Couch Conversations with the doctors. As always, we're going to go around and we're going to introduce our great panel that we have here with us, as always, the urologist of the stars who hates accolades, but he is simply fantastic. And you always can ask the question when he's here, is there a doctor in the house? That's our very own Dr. Terry Mason. Dr. Mason?
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, and the Congressman, for this platform. I look forward to a stimulating conversation with my colleagues this evening. And we should know that all of us are looking at these things from the points of view that we have. And we want to make sure that you understand those points of views where relevant. So thank you, Nikki, and I look forward to an exciting conversation this evening.
Thank you so very much to the doctor that keeps it 100 on the street, aka that's Dr. 100. That's our very own Dr. Maya Green. Dr. Green.
Hello. Hi, community. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Congressman. Dr. Ansel Johnson, it's great to see you again. I'm here to learn, excited to have conversation.
Outstanding. To the weight loss guru, that family physician who can get you slim and trim and save the family's life. That's our very own Dr. Tony Hampton, aka the Wolfgang Puck of cooking.
Thank you, Nikki. Always happy to be here. Always happy to spread the message of healing. As Nikki suggested, a lot of obesity management in my practice. I'm a family doctor, nutrition doctor, and really always excited to spread the healing message. So happy to be here, Nikki, and thank you.
Outstanding. To my coworker who tends to leave us and go and have fun in the sun, and he's trying to get away from this bipolar Chicago weather. That's our very own Dr. Douglas Graham. Dr. Graham.
Hey, listen, thank you. I want to let you know last week, Nikki, that the pipes in our home froze. And we were fortunate enough to get a plumber out to get them going before we had damage. So I understand how cold it is in Chicago. I'm a retired physician. I worked in the western suburbs for 30 years and then worked for 2 years in the congressman's office. It was really an amazing experience. It's a real honor and pleasure to be here with him and my colleagues. I'm going to try and answer your questions if I can.
Outstanding. To our guest, who really isn't a guest, but he's an outstanding physician who focuses on your eyesight. So we got all of your questions that you talked about in reference to the glaucoma and what's going on this month and all of the information about it. So we want to say thank you so very much to Dr. Ansel, who was able to be here with us on this evening. Dr. Ansel?
Well, thank you, Nikki. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here once again. So thank you. And basically what we do in our practice, been in independent practice in Blue Island for over 32 years now. And I'll always say we connect the dots between your eye care, your eyes, and your overall health, because it's all connected and it's all engaged. And the eyes don't operate in isolation. So glasses and contact lenses can't solve the problem if the health of your eyes is not there. So I'm excited about the opportunity to talk about glaucoma, connect the dots between glaucoma, nutrition, your cardiovascular, your heart health, as well as people that have real thick prescriptions, are very nearsighted. And we'll talk about how glaucoma is related to all of those things.
Well, outstanding, and thank you so very much. To the man who makes this possible for us each and every Monday night, to the one who teaches us that true wealth is your health, our very own Congressman of the Illinois 7th Congressional District, Congressman Danny K. Davis.
Well, let me thank all of you once again, and especially let me thank Dr. Ansel Johnson for being with us. The name Johnson reminds me of a dear friend of mine, Dr. Robert Johnson, who started Plano Child Development Center And of course, Bob was an esteemed citizen in Chicago. He and I used to work together at the post office. He had finished optometry school and he was trying to get his practice started. But that was a time when, if you was starting, you wasn't making a whole bunch of money. And Bob came from Helena, Arkansas. He and John Stroger grew up together, and they both went to Catholic school somehow or another. And they both went to the same university down in Louisiana. He was just a delightful gentleman. Started his practice. He'd come from his office and worked there at night. And of course, before he passed away, he was kind of known as the fundraiser for John Stroger and was known as John Stroger's main finance guy. But his daughter has continued to carry on Plano Child Development Center, and she is nationally engaged and involved and still promoting all the things that her daddy did. I happened to listen Sunday on my way to church. I was listening to Doctor in the House, and I was totally inspired because Dr. Mason talked a little bit about why he became a doctor. And I was almost late getting to the church I was going to, listening to that in terms of the why of things, the motivation to do things, and why things are being done. So I look forward to a very stimulating discussion. And I also have been reading, of course, Dexter King passed away, one of Dr. King's children. And Dexter was 62 years old, kind of young in terms of life and life expectancy. But I also have in my hand an article that I read from time to time that says 1.6 million excess deaths in the United States in the past 2 decades. Health equity studies find. And it talks about African American communities experiencing 1.6 million excess deaths in terms of people who maybe could have been alive had not it been for these causative factors. And before we end, perhaps we'll chat a little bit about that before the evening is over. So thank you all once again. Look forward to a stimulating discussion, and I couldn't thank you more for being a part of it.
I know Nikki is not with us. I think she's heading home, so maybe we can just start. I know maybe we'll start Dr. Johnson with some comments about glaucoma. I know in the clinical practice, we see a lot of folk with diabetes. It's pretty striking when you have diabetic retinopathy, diabetic glaucoma, diabetic cataract, and the people are like, why is this diabetes connected? Why do they have actual diagnoses of these eye entities with diabetes? And I think it's important that people connect those dots. And we know that the blood vessels and the nerves are all over the body. They're like pipes, right? So if you damage blood vessels or nerves anywhere, you're damaging blood vessels or nerves everywhere. And I think it's important that people also. I remember when I was a student working with a doctor with West Suburban when I was a
Nikki's trying to get
resident, and I was fascinated when he allowed me to take a look into the eye with those fancy instruments that you guys use, and you can actually see blood vessels in a way that you can probably not see anywhere in the body, so it's really it gives you a view into what's happening with the blood vessels all over the body. So your role as an eye doctor is so valuable to help people see things they may not be able to see on the outside by looking inside the eye. So maybe talk a little bit about glaucoma in particular and what people need to know about that topic.
Sure, most definitely. Thank you, Dr. Hampton. Really appreciate this opportunity. Um, we a little bit about our practice, a little bit more. Although we do glasses, contacts, and stuff, but we're also one of the larger glaucoma practices in the area. Um, it's a passionate area of mine because most of the time people lose their vision needlessly from glaucoma, and it is considered the sneak thief of sight. So let me describe what glaucoma is. Um, Glaucoma is a family of eye diseases where you have damage to the nerve that connects the eyeball to the brain. And you don't get blurry vision for many, many years. How people lose their eyesight from glaucoma is they slowly lose their side or their peripheral vision first. And the clear vision, very straight ahead, is the last to go. And so we have a lot of people with advanced glaucoma, a good number of people that have very poor side vision. They never noticed it. It snuck up on them. A lot of times we'll see someone, well, I broke my glasses, haven't been seen in 5 years, but the doctor gave me these drops. They stung, or they told me something that I need to see a specialist because of something called glaucoma. It wasn't really broken down how serious, potentially serious it is. And we see them and they have a lot of vision impairment to the side. Now, remind you that you can lose your driving privileges even though you're seeing 20/20 and you don't have enough side vision because you can get sideswiped or whatever and not see a child running across until they're right in front of your vehicle. So you have to, by state law, have enough side vision to be able to have driving privileges. And not only that, but a number of different occupations, law enforcement, firefighting, your first responders, you have to have a decent amount of peripheral or side vision to the side. And then, of course, you can still lose your central vision and become legally blind from glaucoma. So again, it damages the nerve fibers inside the eyes, made of a number of different layers that connect the eyeball to the brain. And the eye just catches the light, converts the light to an electrical signal, goes to the brain, and changes it into a image that we see and that we perceive. Now, again, the next question is what causes glaucoma? Well, it used to be in the old days, the little air puff test that people would do, and they feel that that's the glaucoma test. So what we're doing, we're measuring the fluid pressure inside the eye. The eye is not a solid organ. It's actually hollow and is filled with fluid. That fluid has pressure that we can measure, just like measuring the pressure inside a tire. So we measure the pressure, and a lot of times that the warning sign would go up if that fluid pressure inside the eye was high and elevated. So then we investigate we start testing specifically for glaucoma, but that is not the only test that we go by. Now that we know we're more advanced, there are a lot of people that have glaucoma, that have vision loss, that have eye pressures in the normal range. So a lot of times glaucoma is missed with just a really quick screening, check the pressure, and then it's assumed that that person does not have glaucoma. Well, we catch a lot of people with normal eye pressures all the time that have glaucoma. So we actually have to look inside the eye, and most of the times dilate the pupil, where we put drops in, make the pupil larger, and look inside the eye and actually physically look at the nerve in the back of the eyes to see if there's any physical damage. Second complication is that you can look at the nerve in the back of the eye and it looks perfectly healthy and normal, but there's still some slow progressive early damage. And philosophically, I try to be more preventive. So I try to catch eye disease, eye problems at the earliest possible time. And having been in private practice over 30 years, any I can't think of one patient that we have caught very early before there's vision loss that has glaucoma that have lost functional vision. So when you catch it early, people can generally do very, very well the rest of their lives. So they're in a good place. There's a lot of really good technology that's out there that we use to detect it. So again, I talked about measuring the fluid pressure. I talked about where we have to actually physically look, get a good view of the nerve in the back of the eyes. But there's really advanced imaging that we have nowadays that can detect how thin the nerve fibers are inside the eye. I almost like taking an MRI uh, of the back of the eye, where we're measuring those nerve fibers, and we can see thinning before years before there's any vision loss. And then we also do a peripheral vision test. We can do it, where you look inside the machine and you press buttons when you see lights coming on in different areas. So we can detect if there's any side vision loss, again, very, very early. But a lot of the nice technology that we have now can detect glaucoma years before we can even detect vision loss. Other tests that we do, we can actually measure the electrical signal in the eye. And I was on a study group uh, that we investigated and looked at an ERG. Basically, it's like taking an EKG of the heart. We can measure the electrical signal in the eye. And there's a standard there now where we can actually measure loss of the electrical function in the back of the eye. Again, years before there's measurable vision loss. So there's some exciting things happening to help us prevent these problems very early in people. The problem is most folks don't have these devices and don't have one. It's usually caught when there's early vision loss and it's unnecessary. So another test that we do is very specific color vision testing. Nerve damage can also damage your color vision. Doesn't make you color blind, but things look a little bit more faded, not as sharp, not as crisp. So there's some good stuff out there that we utilize every day, and we use these devices, this technology to monitor progression, and we can catch it early again and make adjustments in the medication. Um, now,
Dr. Ansel, go ahead.
no, I can go into how we manage it, but I'll pause for questions now.
Well, yeah, want to say hello to Virginia Knight, who is here. Virginia Knight says, evening to everyone, and thanks for your time and your expertise. Cindy Scott is here, and she says, hello. Connie Taylor is here. And Connie says, good evening to everybody. Sister Bonnie is here. And Sister Bonnie says, good evening just as well to everyone. V. Talley, that's Valdemir Talley, he's here. He says, hello and good evening. Could that detection occur during a hypertensive screening? That's his question.
I'm
And then I
sorry.
know Dr. Green had some questions just as well.
Can you repeat that question, please? I didn't hear.
His question says, hello and good evening. Could that detection occur during a hypertensive screening?
Short answer is no, because if you're checking blood pressure, it's usually done at most physicians' offices in your general checkup. Now, we check blood pressures of all of our adult patients in our office. And what we find, we catch a lot of people with unknown hypertension. So that's another aspect that we look at. But that's separate. Getting into the causes of glaucoma, what they're finding more and more, and Dr. Hampton talked about how he sees a lot of patients living with diabetes. We see a lot of patients living with diabetes. What they realize now is that how the blood flow around the nerve in the back of the eyes, when it's compromised, that puts you at risk for glaucoma. So we see a lot of patients with diabetes, but a higher percentage of those patients develop glaucoma because of the circulation, the perfusion of blood around the nerve and inside the eye. So when that's compromised, that puts a person at risk for glaucoma. So we definitely scrutinize those individuals a lot more. Other co-risk factors for glaucoma. So, well, let's talk about diabetes and how it relates. That go now you're going into Dr. Hampton's specialty and Dr. Mason, and we're talking about lifestyle and diet. So I talk to people about lifestyle. And I'll give you a quick story too. I had a person that I was monitoring for glaucoma. She was really at high risk. Her pressure's a little high. The nerve looks kind of suspicious. And I followed this person for a while, and then I saw her about 6 months later, a little bit later than what I wanted to see her, because I was ready to pull the trigger to put her on eye drops and medications for glaucoma because I wanted to be more proactive and preventative for this person. I think about how I want this person to see 5 and 10 years down the road, even though they're not immediately at risk. She came back, her eye pressures were much lower, and again, no nerve damage, no progression or anything like that. And I was like, what did you do? And this young lady, she just basically she lost a little weight and she started more cardiovascular activities. So she was more physically active. Her eye pressures went down, and I'm like, no medications for you, but we still need to watch you, of course. But she was definitely in a good place just from lifestyle changes. So it's all connected, folks. The other kind of causes that I do want to make people aware of, and it's a new field in eye care, but our children in front of computers, we're seeing more and more nearsightedness. So those children, those adults that are highly myopic or nearsighted with thick prescriptions, they are at higher risk for glaucoma because then their eyes are actually more enlarged and elongated. So the nerve fibers are thinner and more fragile in the back of the eyes. And the thing of it is, what we can do now is catch these children at a younger age. And this field is called myopia management. And so we have technologies and medication, eye drops, and special contact lenses that can actually slow down or stabilize this nearsightedness. Because when they're extremely nearsighted or have thick prescriptions as an adult, they're not only at risk for glaucoma, but retinal detachment, macular degeneration, um, those items that are very sight threatening and potentially blinding. So now we finally have tools that we can help our kids now with that. Um, Another causes of glaucoma, again, people that are living with high blood pressure. Again, that's a profusion or circulatory problem with blood flow in the eyes and around the nerves. So when we look inside the eye, that is the only place in the body we can look at the blood vessels in their natural state. And that's why we as eye doctors are able to catch a lot of things. A lot of people, I can see hardening of the arteries, atherosclerosis. I can see narrowing of the blood vessels in the back of the eye. And I talk to patients about that. We also monitor people's BMI, basal metabolic index, where we as a people are a lot more obese now. So I talk to people about their BMI and how that's important because even though you may not have diabetes, you may not have high blood pressure, but because of the extent in which you are overweight, you're at higher risk for stroke and heart attack. And that goes to lifestyle, which again can relate to glaucoma and how what we see inside the eyes.
Dr. Johnson, this is Dr. Mason, one of your patients too. I want people to know, but the thing I wanted to sort of have you sort of discuss, who should start, number one, what age should someone start seeing an eye doctor like yourself, optometrist, at what age?
Sure.
And and do you need to wait for symptoms?
Never wait for symptoms. That's like, I'll address that last. That's like waiting until your oil light comes on in your car to change the oil. What you gonna do? Burn out your engine eventually, right? Waiting on symptoms is the worst way to manage your health care. The worst way. So again, a lot of our training is to deal with train wrecks, right? In healthcare, we, as optometrists, all of our classes get around. Okay, these are the different grades of diabetes in the back of the eye, and this is when we need to refer for injections or laser surgery. Whereas I think we can flip that switch and catch things early and manage eye health. Um, Now, to your question about how early someone should see, the American Optometric Association recommends a child be examined at 6 months old. 6 months old for the first complete eye exam. This is the problem, though. Not many eye doctors outside of pediatric ophthalmologists see children that young. So, in the real world, practically speaking, my recommendation to my patients, don't wait till after child is older than 2 years old. So 2 years old is my benchmark. Sometimes the pediatricians can pick up on things, but if you're an eye doctor that is really pediatrically geared, we can pick up things because we have the equipment. So the short answer, my experience is 2 years old in my office, practically speaking. The other problem with that, a lot of eye doctors, you go to many, even doctors in private practice or the corporate situations, they don't like seeing kids younger than 7 or 8 years old, especially if they can't read the eye chart or don't know their letters. So the problem is supply. Pediatric ophthalmologists, it can take to see a pediatric ophthalmologist 6 to 8 months to get in to see them. So you need to find an optometrist or an ophthalmologist that is willing to see, and that's going to be a phone call. So that's the answer. In my experience, at least 2 years old, but the official recommendation is 6 months old. There is a program that we participate in called Infant C that is sponsored by the American Optometric Association, where doctors will sign up and volunteer to see a child that is 6 months to a year old free of charge. Infant C. And you can get on the American Optometric Association website. We are part of that, where we can see these young children at 6 months old and do a very early exam on these kids.
I'm curious about, since I consider myself the metabolic doc, I've actually seen people become metabolically healthy with lifestyle changes, and then things get better. So in your experience, how often do you see the pressures of the eyes get better with lifestyle changes? Maybe the retinopathy not, kind of stabilizing and maybe even improving. Have you seen evidence of that in your clinical practice?
In people with diabetes, most definitely. We've seen, again, people lose their sight from diabetes because of hemorrhages, swelling, and scarring in the back of the eye. So we've seen reversals and improvement where you might see some mild hemorrhages and we'll see them go away. You'll see sometimes hemorrhages even with poorly controlled high blood pressure, and we've seen them go away. Hardening the arteries and narrowing the arteries that we see, it's less often that I see that. It would take pretty intensive lifestyle changes to make the hardening, the very fragile blood vessels to go away. I mean, to improve the blood flow. But we can actually look at that in a non-invasive way. A lot of times you would have to go to a retinal specialist where they inject dye in your arm and take pictures and see where the blood vessels are leaking in the back of the eyes. And some people are allergic to the dye. It's very uncomfortable. You're dilated. Whereas now a few of us have the technology to look at that in a non-invasive way. So again, get back to your question. Yes, you can see some reversal. If it's mild, if it's more advanced, you're just trying to keep them from getting worse. Whereas we'll reverse totally, it's unlikely and it's tough, but don't really see that as often.
What about cataracts? When should people start looking for those, and what can they do to help prevent them?
Well, we're always looking for cataracts. Sometimes cataracts can be something people are born with, congenital cataracts, but more commonly, cataracts is a clouding of the camera lens inside the eye, right behind the pupil, the colored part of the eye. And that camera lens does not stay crystal clear all of our lives. So with age, that lens can start somehow getting hazy, just like your hair turning gray. So I didn't start off with all of this, but just like your hair turning gray, cataracts over time can start cloudy and get hazy. Now, that is connected to your overall health. Things like diabetes, where your blood sugar is fluctuating, even people that are pre or borderline diabetic tend to develop cataracts more often because your fluctuating blood sugars can enhance or hasten that clouding of the lens inside the eye. So I tell people it's really, really important to get things in check to slow that clouding down, um, to keep yourself seeing clear. And symptoms, cataracts will give you symptoms. Decreased night vision is usually one of the early ones. A lot of times people will complain about glare at night uh, because of the clouding of the lens inside the eye. So think about a tray of ice cubes in your freezer, and you pull out the ice cube, you see the haziness in the ice cubes, and that's literally almost exactly how cataracts look inside the eye when we see it with magnification. People think they can walk up on somebody and look in their eyes and think that they have cataracts. No, you have to see them under magnification with the microscopes that we have in our offices. So a lot of times people get cataracts confused with that little colored ring around the pupil, the colored part of the eye. That's not cataracts. That's a different issue. Good question, Dr. Mason.
The other thing, just to follow that up, you talked about supplements, uh, and there's things like lutein and all those sorts of things. What role, if any, do they have?
Ooh, they have research is showing more and more and more over time. Your supplements and diet can be huge. There are different supplements that we recommend: lutein, zeaxanthin, mesozeaxanthin. They're long names. I don't expect people to remember it, but these are things that you get in your brightly colored vegetables, your um, uh, greens, and your kale, and your um, cucumbers, and your bell peppers, your different colored bell peppers, your squashes. They contain these ingredients, but most people don't get enough in their diet. And we found that there's one supplement that's evidence based that can help actually, and it has those brightly pigmented proteins, but they have other vitamins, vitamin C and omega 3s and things of that nature that are more concentrated that have shown to help stabilize early diabetic changes in the back of the eyes. So that all helps. And again, I generally will prescribe supplements because a lot of times people just are not getting enough of those things in the eye. One supplement you have professional baseball players using because it enhances their color vision, their contrast sensitivity. So they need every little edge they can get in watching that baseball. So some of these supplements are used by professional athletes to even enhance their vision.
When should you start taking your child for an evaluation? When should you start?
At least by 2 years old at the latest. Preschool, we see a lot of kids. Now, thank goodness, the state legislature probably over 10 years ago passed a law that children should have a complete thorough eye exam by an eye doctor by 5 years old, um, fifth grade, first grade, and I think entering high school, as opposed to a screening, because there are a lot of children that have issues that pass screenings with flying colors. Uh, had a child today, failed a screening, had a slight problem, but the reason he failed the screening was because they thought the child couldn't see, but that the child could see, but she had other eye muscle coordination problems. So 2 years old, before preschool, Head Start, uh, first grade most definitely is mandated by state. So thank goodness we're catching more of those children. But there are a lot of times we should, if they have a severe problem like a lazy eye, the earlier you catch those things, the better off the child can be. We're literally treating some children that have big discrepancy between the vision between the two eyes. and we're able to kind of treat them and intervene early, so that as an adult they'll have more functional vision in that eye. So the earlier the better with our kids.
So, Dr. Johnson, I was reading that in the U.S., at least 2.7 million people are experiencing glaucoma, and they think that's going to go up by 2030 to over 4.2 million. I also, it also ties in with something that the congressman just mentioned, which was like inequity in outcomes, right? And so I also was reading about people impacted, at younger ages, predominantly African American, and then our residents who identify specifically as Mexican American. And so making sure that we get our annual, eye exam is important. Now, that ties into something I read, and that kind of in my practice, I've had people ask me, once you get glaucoma, once glaucoma, not once you get it, once the impact of glaucoma on your optic nerve has happened, is this something that is reversible, or should we focus super preventive, don't even let it get there? Can you talk a little bit about that, whether it's reversible, and if it's not, what should we do? Where's the hope in that?
I am very big on prevention, early detection. I have seen where people have shown a little bit of early loss in side vision because their eye fluid pressures in the eye are high. And I have seen improvement once the pressure is under control. They still have glaucoma, but we're treating it. The pressure's under much better control, and I have seen some improvement. But it is not reversible in the sense that if you have significant nerve damage, we don't know how to regenerate nerve tissues.
Yeah.
Just like if you in your back, you break your back, you're paralyzed. We cannot regenerate that nerve tissue. The same thing with the eye. The optic nerve in the eye is really an extension to the brain. So we don't know. We can see sometimes improvements, but the eye stuff is people are working on what we call neuroprotection to protect the nerves. But on a practical, everyday, functional sense, you want to deal with that stuff very, very early. Pay attention to it. Usually, when you catch glaucoma early, it's not an emergency. And I've had people that were in denial, and you know how we get, I'm not claiming this, I'm not claiming glaucoma, blah, blah, blah. Well, I hear where you're speaking, and I walk by faith too, because I, you know, God is, I serve a true and powerful God, and I just try to be his instrument. But if the Lord's trying to send people your way to tell you might need to change your ways a little bit and change your behavior, I think you should listen. So it's not about whether you claim in anything. God provides instruments here on this planet for you to live a fuller life, and you need to take advantage of it.
So you can't, if you're a person like me, I can't just get so busy and just skip my exam and then say whatever's going on with my eye, I'll just wait until I finally come to you, and then you'll be able to fix everything. You don't advocate that. You wait. You want me to keep in contact when I'm scheduled so that you can help me prevent some outcomes. Yeah, I'm guilty of that too. So this the year I'm gonna land a plane. You know.
Okay. Well, we'll look forward to having you land in our office, but it is real, and it's real. I mean, the nerve in the back of the eye is an extension of the brain, so that lends itself to glaucoma, and there's a link between diabetes and glaucoma. I said nearsightedness and glaucoma, hypertension, because of how it affects the blood flow inside the other article that I just pulled up that came in last November, that poor sleep is linked to a higher risk of glaucoma. So sleep apnea doctors, and I see this all the time, if you're a snorer or if you have to wear a CPAP, you're at a higher risk for developing a glaucoma, what we call normal pressure glaucoma.
Mhm.
So if you wear a CPAP and haven't had your eyes checked, you need to have a real thorough evaluation for glaucoma.
Hmm.
So, Dr. Johnson, you talk about being proactive. Do you have certain thresholds or pressures or percentages, chances of developing glaucoma that makes you want to start treatment? Do they have to be at 30% at risk, 60% at risk, 75% at risk?
Pressure is just one thing that we look at.
Okay.
But if someone just strolls into the office, okay, I need a new pair of glasses, and my vision plan's paying me something, and I see a pressure. I have my own pressures. It probably doesn't mean anything to our audience, but if I see pressure and you Black or Hispanic, and say your pressure's at 19, I'm gonna get a really good look at that nerve. I'm going to see if you have family history. I'm going to see if you have hypertension. I'm going to say, are you diabetic? Are you pre-diabetic? Those are all risk factors. Is your prescription really, really high? Then that person, even though things may look perfectly normal, I'm going to look at it a little bit deeper and have them come back and do a really in-depth evaluation for glaucoma. Because again, keep in mind, you can not have any side vision loss, but still have early glaucoma. So yeah, there are pressures that I look at uh,
Mhm.
that will kind of raise an eyebrow, or throw up a yellow flag or red flag. But again, we look at the whole person
Mhm.
and look at that in context with the pressures and with other things that we test for.
I just want to, if I can, take a moment, maybe a year and a half ago, I don't remember, but for those of y'all that have been rocking with us for uh, a while ago, we did a talk on sleep apnea, just to tie in what Dr. Johnson is saying. Dr. Pete and Dr. Hampton were honing in on when the body's blood vessels and mechanisms actually heal, and blood vessels, I'm not talking about nerves, actually heal and repair themselves, right? Dr. And so that's usually at night, right?
Mhm.
But if you have sleep apnea, they're not really repairing themselves. They're kind of struggling. You're not resting, so the body's not repairing. I mean, the blood vessels aren't repairing themselves, and you have effectively a loss of oxygen. That loss of oxygen to your body,
Mhm.
inability to repair the blood vessels, lead to the blood vessels not delivering oxygen and nutrients to that optic nerve. Dr. Johnson, I've been calling you Dr. Ansel for so long. Dr. Johnson
That's okay.
mentioned that glaucoma is a family of diseases that damage the optic nerve. Ischemia, loss of that oxygen and nutrients,
Mhm.
cause damage to whatever nerve. We're talking about optic nerve, but Dr. Hampton already told you if it's happening in one place, it's happening everywhere. But we're
Yep.
talking about optic nerve. So I got sleep apnea. I'm not breathing. I'm not getting my nutrients. I'm not getting my oxygen to the optic nerve. That causes optic nerve damage. And to me, that's the tie-in why sleep apnea kind of increases uh, the impact of glaucoma or contributes to glaucoma. Dr. Johnson, straighten it out if I'm off or kind of add to it. I'm one of those people, I like to explain the whole so people kind
Mhm.
of know what's going on with their bodies.
Yeah, as you know, with sleep apnea, you're oxygen deprived for several times throughout the night. And what distributes oxygen throughout the body? It's a blood flow. It's our blood vessels. So
Hmm.
the optic nerve is affected as well as other things, as well as your kidneys and other things. So that's there's another part of glaucoma is what we call normal tension or low tension. So that's where the eye pressures are perfectly normal, but we'll see a degeneration of the nerve fibers in the back of the eye. And so wherever those pressures are, we have to get them lower. So uh, right now, that's the only way we know how to treat glaucoma is lowering the fluid pressure in the eye. And we're looking for something that can protect the nerve fibers and in the back of the eyes. And it's not quite there yet. And here's another article that from the American Academy of Ophthalmology. that says the right combination of vitamins may help prevent glaucoma. So the things like lutein and zeaxanthin and good quality fish oil supplements help increase the circulation. They help with transmission of electrical signals in the brain. So there's a number of different, but everybody's different. I don't ever paint a broad brush on what's good for you is good for everybody, other than lifestyle. Everybody's going to be a little bit different in terms of their needs and combinations. But again, that's the American Academy of Ophthalmology that checks the box on in terms of understanding that supplementation, which, we supplement because we're not getting enough of these things in our regular diet. So, and the combination of all of that can help.
I'll add, Dr. Johnson, real quick that I'm sorry, Nikki, just real quick. I want to, and I think this is something me and Dr. Mason and our colleagues emphasize. Prevention is so important. What's good about lifestyle is it doesn't just prevent, as you suggested earlier, Dr. Johnson. You can see reversal and healing in certain people who are able to achieve those changes in lifestyle, and that's why I appreciate our congressman bringing up health inequities, because sometimes people struggle because of the inequitable world we live in. So maybe I don't have access to the right foods. Maybe my resources won't allow me to do these things. Maybe I'm in a dysfunctional marriage, but sleep and stress, to add to what Dr. Maya was saying, is critical for many reasons in many ways. But one of the things that come to my mind is if I'm stressed, if I have sleep apnea, or if I just simply I'm not getting enough sleep for any reason, it's a fight or flight state. Your body's kind of in chronic stress mode. And when you're in chronic stress mode, you're gonna naturally need energy and fuel to fight the stress source, which you think may be a lion, but it may just be stress, right? Lack of sleep. You will then produce more stress hormones, not just adrenaline and norepinephrine, but you're going to produce cortisol. And when you produce all this excessive cortisol, that's going to then result in having all this energy floating around with no need for it, because you're really not doing anything. You're not running a race. So now you have the sugar, which is toxic in excess. You only have a teaspoon of sugar in your body at any given time. So if you have all this extra sugar being produced by the liver, gluconeogenesis, now all of a sudden that's going to lead to glycation, where the glucose combines with the proteins, and you have proteins in your nerves, you got proteins in the line of your arteries. So you have all this inflammatory cascade occurring. So what I try to tell patients is the following: it's okay to take supplements, it's okay to take eye drops, it's okay to have procedures and surgeries, but what is the root cause of your glaucoma? And if it's inflammatory, if it's excessive inflammation from glycation because you have arteries everywhere, then let's focus on that as well. And I think you can't have a pail of water and you have holes in that water and you keep filling the pail with water, and you're wondering why you never have a big pail of water to bring to your family for water. That's because you got to patch the holes up. And so what I tell patients, one way you can patch up the hole is to stop giving your body the inadequate nutrition, dealing with the stress, dealing with the lack of sleep. And if you do those things, then the body can pause for a moment and there's a path to healing. And I think we'll have to say this message over and over again. There's no magic pill to solve your problem. We have to get the root cause out the way first while you're using this technology, which you've described. I mean, I had never heard of the technology for the nerves to actually measure how well your nerves are working. But it's also important that you remove that excessive glycation that's also damaging your nerves. So if you don't get rid of that first, you're going to be chasing your tail. And that's what I wanted to message to those who are checking us out tonight.
Well, there's one thing that Dr. Mason always says, and there is no cavalry coming, that we are the cavalry. And that's why we are here on Monday nights because we are the cavalry. We are the village helping to strengthen each other. I want to say thank you to the people who were texting saying, hurry up and get home. I am now off the expressway. Thank you, Doug, for holding everything down while I was driving on that expressway. That's why I was sideways. Doug took over and got the comments to start sharing. Joanne is here and she says, good evening to everyone and thank you for all that you do. Of course, Tamika Thomas is here, and I know he gave you guys all of her shout outs that she was here, but she was telling Dr. Johnson, Dr. Ansel Johnson, come on now when he was speaking. Barbara Ivory says, thank you for sharing that a lack of sleep affects glaucoma. Barbara Ivory also had a question. She says, and I'm going to read her question, but we're going to come back to it because there's another question that I want to share with you just as well. So, because I know our time is getting short. Barbara Ivory says, I had cataracts removed from both eyes in 2020. Occasionally, I have black dots or flashes across my pupils. It's not daily, just a few times a month. What can I do when that happens? So I want you to hold on to that one. So if we get a chance, I want you to answer that for Flo Strong is here. I want to say, hey, Flo, next month, we're going to have you on as a guest. And one of the things we're going to talk about, and it was one of the things that we were reaching into tonight, is some of the policies in healthcare. And I know you wanted to talk about that as well. And she's saying, hey, to the congressman just as well. But I have an anonymous comment here from a mother. She says, first of all, thank you, Congressman Davis, for all that you do. And thank you for shining a light on healthcare. I'm glad that we're having this conversation tonight. And thanks for the email, Nikki, about health policy and glaucoma. I asked the questions about glaucoma because I have a 12-year-old son. My son is 12 and he was born with diabetes. I'm asking this question because we've had so many problems trying to get him a glucose monitor to monitor him daily. All they give us is just the insulin that they want him to have and all of these medications, but everyone else has this little monitor. When he's in school, I believe this will be helpful to him, but the insurance always gives us a problem about him having the glucose monitor to tell us what his sugar is doing throughout the day. He has these spikes in school that scares his teachers, and then he ends up home because they don't want to be responsible for him. Also, when we are going to the eye doctor, it's all of this paperwork that I have to go through, and then sometimes the insurance doesn't pay for everything. He has insurance on both sides. I am divorced. I am a city employee, and I have city insurance, which is an HMO. His dad has a PPO. He's covered under both of our insurance. However, to no avail am I getting the necessary service that I think my son needs. Thank you, Congressman, for everything. I'm just asking for some additional help or some resources of where we can help my son.
I can, well, diabetes is another passionate area of mine. And our office, our practice is the very first eye care facility in the state of Illinois to have a certified diabetes education program, period. Only 2 in the United States, because we're passionate about it. Right now, we're going through our recertification process. I'm very familiar and passionate about glucose meters, continuous glucose meters, because my mom, who's 94, wears one, and I know it has saved her life because that alarm will go off on my phone, and I'll go get her some orange juice or call her and say, drink some, get your blood sugar up. I had a 16-year-old. He was on insulin. Talked him into getting it. He was resistant, but it makes a big difference. And it's going to be, a lot of times the insurance, you should not have to beg. If he's taking insulin, most insurance companies are paying for those continuous glucose meters. If they're on any kind of insulin, the bar is actually getting lower because these companies now understand it's going to save them tons of money for amputations and heart attacks and strokes because it empowers people with information to control their blood sugar. I can, I'd like to, and again, the other problem is access. And sometimes they, with HMOs, the South Side of Chicago I call this the eye care desert. We have tried to get on HMOs panels because we're willing to take what they pay, but we're told, well, we're not taking any providers. And then my question is, how many of your enrollees are Black? Tons of enrollees that are Black, but no Black eye doctors on your panel. So in terms of policy, those things can be looked into in terms of prior authorizations. There are newer diabetes medications that are out that Dr. Hampton and Dr. Mace can attest to that I think work better than metformin. Um, in terms of another policy for diabetes education, right now only physicians can refer patients for diabetes education. That should be broadened to nurses. The patients should be able to self refer. If they need diabetes education, they should be able to refer themselves. Optometrists, podiatrists, dentists should also be able to refer patients living with diabetes to have diabetes education. That's a big roadblock. That has been shown in studies that patients that have diabetes education, seen a diabetes educator, have been to a program, have lower A1C levels because they're empowered with information in terms of how to take care of themselves. I do that with people every day and I talk to them about that, setting goals. So, those are some policy issues that I think we can address.
Okay, thank you. Well, Flo Strong says Humana followed their decree to shut down all employee commercial healthcare insurances as of December 31st, 2023 for the entire country. Tamika Thomas is asking, how can she find you? So when you get the opportunity, please put your information in the chat, Dr. Johnson. Tamika also says we need more African American doctors that understand our culture and hear and understand us. As a nurse, I feel sad for Black and Brown patients. Thank you, Tamika. Thank you so much for your comments and your share. Also, our mom says, thank you for sharing and thank you for giving me these ideas in reference to my son. I advocate all the time. I just feel like no one's listening. And I feel desperate because my son is suffering.
So, mother tried contacting the manufacturer of these monitors. And they may be willing under these sets of circumstances to help her afford these devices. And then they have programs that are available. So if the HMO says no, I would reach right out to the manufacturer and see if they can help. Or if there's a local diabetes foundation, diabetes club, that might be another place to reach out to and see if they can provide some assistance and guidance too.
Outstanding. And I just want to go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, our office, we do have sample Dexcom 7 glucose monitors. So it lasts for 10 days. Mm-hmm. So I'd be more than happy to give her son a sample, show him how to use it. And hopefully in the interim, they can apply for an appeal to get one prescribed.
You know, Barbara Agnew says, thank you, Congressman Davis. You keep us aware. But I got to share with you, doctors, it is easier. It was easier for me to get my dog a glucometer than it was to get one for a live patient. Now, that's sad. That is sad.
Nikki, I just wanted to add something really quick before we left. And it's something because it's personal experience. When you've been seeing bad for a long time and it's normalized, and it's normal for you to see the way that you see because you've never seen anything any different. We have to really think about those kids that maybe in the old days they couldn't see the board, or now you can't see the screen, but there was no real screening that was happening for those children like myself. Mm-hmm. So I just want people to know that just because people don't complain that they can't see something doesn't mean that there's nothing wrong, because they may be in a situation where they've never been able to see it and don't see not seeing it as a problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Tamika Thomas says, this is so true. Laura Leone says, very sad. Laura, tell me if there's any additional resources over at Mount Sinai whenever you get a chance. Dr. J has also put that information in there. And then our mother also claps back and she says, thank you, Dr. Mason, for sharing that. I've had to go to the school several times. They did tons of different testing on my son to see if he was slow or had problems, and that wasn't it. The problem was he just could not see. Well, people are chiming in and saying this is a wonderful show and such a terrific show tonight. And I know you guys hate to hear me say this. You hate it. I know you hate it. And that's when I say It's our time. But Dr. Johnson, you got a quick announcement that I want you to share. I want you to share your announcement really quickly with us before we do our Until Next Mondays. Matter of fact, after you share your announcement, why don't you tell us your Until Next Monday? What do you want us to remember until next Monday?
Until next Monday, just try to eat a little bit better. Pay attention to your vision. It's all connected, and you know, be well, see well, and be blessed. That's always my mantra. Um, Tomorrow we're affiliated with a 501c3 uh, by the name of Healthy Living with a Vision. Our medical director, Dr. James Thompson, is presenting a 28-day kickstart for plant-based eating. We had our first session last Tuesday, and we have 3 more sessions. Last Tuesday, people always wonder how they're going to get started. So we talked about that last week. Tomorrow at 7 p.m., they're going to talk about how do you handle your urges and your cravings. And so we're going to talk about that. So and then for the next 3 Tuesday evenings, and then we're going to have follow up monthly after that. Not trying to make everybody a vegan, but just trying to move the needle a little bit more because we know that your diet and lifestyle can directly relates to your quality of life. Our medical professions can keep us living longer, but what's the quality of life that we all want to live? To register for that session tomorrow, you go to our website, healthylivingwithavision.org. I put it in the chat, healthylivingwithavision.org, and be sure to register. And tomorrow at 7 p.m. and the next 3 Tuesdays.
Now, is this via Zoom? Is it virtual?
It's via Zoom, yes.
Okay. Outstanding. Thank you.
And for our office, if anyone has questions, you can text our office as well as call. Our phone number is 708-385-0013. Again, I put that in the chat, 708-385-0013. And don't mind questions.
Thank you. Doug, your Until Next Monday.
So, my reaction to what I've heard tonight is that your primary care doctor is really the first line of defense of your health, and how necessary it is to go in to have these checkups, because your blood pressure is silent. Your blood sugar may be elevated, and that's silent too. To see that eye doctor once a year, because the elevation pressures in your eye, that may be silent as well. So it's just part of our routine to depend on that primary care doctor to be your first line to help detect these things and to protect and guard your health.
Outstanding. And thank you so much. Dr. Mason, your Until Next Monday.
One of the things that I would say, thank you very much for the show. Thank you, Dr. Ansel. I've been kicking around for a long time.
Yeah.
One of the things I would say is for the parents out there, don't wait for your children to come and complain about not being able to see. Mm-hmm. Don't do that. Take them and have them check to see if they can see. Because a lot of times when you've never seen, as I mentioned earlier, you don't know there's something wrong because you've never seen anything very well. And you won't know the difference till I did when I had the experience when I went to the optometrist's office for the first time, and they put the lens they're trying to put over your eyes to see. And when they clicked them and got them where I could see, I didn't believe that was possible to see that well. So have your children professionally checked. Don't even go by what they say.
Mm-hmm.
Outstanding. And thank you. I see we have a number of our hospital teams that are dropping their information for their diabetes centers and clinics in the chat. I want to thank you so very much for doing that. These are all great resources to our constituents throughout the community. So I want to say thank you so very much for sharing that information. Dr. Tony Hampton, your Until Next Monday.
Everybody who checked us out tonight may have noticed that we mentioned diabetes disproportionate to anything else. And that's because diabetes, because it affects the blood vessels all over your body, because the glucose has to flow throughout your body. It could be the most damaging thing. So the good news is if you have type 1 diabetes like my wife, you can have an A1C of 5.6 if you eat a diet does not lead to insulin spikes. What's the best way to know what to eat? Um, you don't have to follow a specific dietary pattern. All you have to do is listen to your meter. And hopefully you're blessed with a continuous glucose meter. If you eat something that spikes your sugar, stop eating that. It's just that simple. Um, Another thing that's really important to distinguish between a person with type 1 diabetes and type 2 is to do a C-peptide. If that C-peptide measurement, which is the precursor to pre-insulin and then insulin, is in the normal range, that means that you have type 2 diabetes and it's reversible. If you have type 1, don't worry, you can still have a normal life expectancy as long as you eat the right diet to keep your sugar from spiking. So use a meter to be your biggest guide, because diabetes is probably the biggest risk factor for the eye conditions we spoke of. And then the last thing I'll mention is, most dogs and cats should not be getting diabetes. They should not be getting depression. They should not be getting all of these chronic health conditions that we get. They probably do better off in the wild because we feed them food that they shouldn't be eating. If you look at Alpo as an example, and you look at the nutrition label, you'll see a lot of processed foods. So if the dog shouldn't be eating a lot of those things in boxes, humans shouldn't be eating a lot of things in boxes. So be very thoughtful about what you eat. And if you want your continuous glucose meter not to spike, I would spend more time on the outer part of the grocery store where you have the fresh vegetables and the meat and things of that nature, which are less likely to spike your blood sugar, and then avoid the things that do. So I just want to provide hope, because I see people reversing type 2 diabetes on a routine basis. And you don't do it by eating or taking medicine. You do it by changing your diet and your lifestyle. So there is hope. Just continue to seek what works for you, but let the meter be your guide.
I am laughing because of the statement you made about dogs. Silver and Gold were sitting here and they began to nod when you said that, and Gold started barking. They will pick the processed food out and they wait on me to cook when I come
That's
in.
right.
I have to cook for 2 dogs when I come in. So it's funny. They pick out the processed dog food and they'll eat the rice and the sweet potatoes that I have put in there, because that's what they're looking for.
They want real food. That's
They
right.
want to
Amen
say,
to your
hey.
dog.
Yeah, it's funny because they got to talking when you said it as if they knew what you were talking about. And apparently, so they did. Want to say hey to our team over at the Core Center who is working. They keep reminding me I did not mention them. We want to say hey to our team over there. And you guys find some strange things to actually send me a text message about. Want to say thank you for that compliment. It was a gift from our own Dr. Maya Green. So thank you so much. They're talking about the lipstick, Maya. So thank you so much. But the team over at the Core Center brought it up. So I want to say thank you. Dr. 100, you're until next Monday.
She's fierce. Oh, okay. Well, what I got from this one, Dr. Ansel, I've been calling you Dr. Ansel for so long. I'm so sorry. Dr. Johnson, what I got from this is people like me have to pick a stroke. I don't want to go out in the cold. I say I'm too busy. And I don't want glaucoma. And I want to be able to see, right? So in taking from what you said, if I'm the type of person that's talking about I'm not going to claim glaucoma, then I need to do everything so glaucoma doesn't claim me, right? I got to pick a struggle. Yeah. All right. Until next Monday.
All right. Thank you so very much, Congressman. As always, take us home.
Well, let me thank the entire panel, especially let me thank Dr. Johnson for not only an excellent presentation, but for really walking us through many of the issues and complications dealing not only with glaucoma as it relates to the eye, but really diabetes, period, which we all know is a major illness in the United States, period, but especially among African Americans. All of this scares me to death because I've been a type 2 diabetic now for about 25 years. And, you know, sometimes I manage to leave my walking cane someplace. I've been leaving it for the last 2, 3 days. It's, I also have back ailments. One of my staffers died just during the Christmas holidays. Shirley passed away. Two of my fiercest workers, and one has prostate cancer, and the other one has pancreatic cancer. My wife broke her ankle. Other people who've been sick. But this business of faith is so important, and belief that we can control and do a much better job of controlling some of these disease entities. Uh, Dr. Johnson, you gave me some ideas, and I really look forward to a one on one with you and perhaps a few others. I saw some areas where we might be able to introduce some legislation that relates in a way that might resolve some of the issues in a way relative to certain kinds of access. Uh, to the lady who mentioned, and I assume it was a lady, that she was having difficulty acquiring some equipment or supplies for her son, please give us a call and let us better understand that. And we may be able to do something. I got a letter from CMS myself telling me that if anybody ever tried to charge me more than $35 a month for insulin, to let them know that they would dig into it and see what was going on. I thought that was really cool that CMS was sending out that kind of information to seniors who qualify for this $35 a month cap in terms of insulin. So there are good things happening. There are wonderful things happening. But I tell you, as we do the education, the awareness, and promotion, we also better watch in a very serious way efforts that are underway in this country to take away some of the progress that has been made. And if I could ever have it until next Monday, it is to beware. Honest to goodness, there are some thought processes in this country. There are some movements and some efforts in this country to destroy in a very concrete way. And if you never read history, I urge you to read the history of Reconstruction and what happened at the end of Reconstruction to minorities, to Black folks in America. Because others decided that too much progress had been made, and that progress had to stop. We often talk about the time when there were a fairly decent number of Black owned, Black run, Black operated hospitals in America, United States. All of them were put out of business. All of them were technically put out of business because they didn't that were established in the Flaxno Report. And so they couldn't be accredited. They couldn't. So we better watch and pray. Do like my daddy used to tell us, pray for a good harvest, but keep on hoeing. So this country is headed in a direction, if we're not careful, we're not going to like. And we're not going to believe that you can go backwards. But I warn you that yes, we can, unless we make sure that we continue to go forward. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for a wonderful evening. Have a good until next week. And again, Dr. Johnson, thank you so much, and we'll be talking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.